Jesus sounds like the worst travel advisor that I have ever heard. He tells his disciples to go out on their journey with absolutely nothing. No purse with money, no bag with extra necessities like food or clothing, no sandals on their feet. Even worse, he tells them to be completely quiet and not say a word to anyone on the road while they are traveling. Now, if I told all of us to take off our shoes and walk to Catonsville with nothing, literally nothing, but the clothes on our backs, I highly doubt that you would all take me up on that command. If I told you to keep to yourself and never say hello or acknowledge anyone on your walk, I imagine you would find that to be a bit rude or strange. And then, strangest of all, Jesus tells them to walk up to the people's houses in that state and give them all a greeting of peace. In the time of Jesus, a house receiving a guest or stranger requesting hospitality could not turn them away. So they would have to let them in. He further instructs them to stay in that house the entire time they are in that town, eating and drinking whatever people offer them, healing the sick, proclaiming the gospel of Jesus Christ to them. Of course, there will be people who reject them, Jesus explains, so make sure to be ready when and if they do. To prepare for that rejection, think about what it would be like to say, I reject even the very dirt from the streets of your town, the dirt stuck to my sandalless feet. God has still come near to you, even though you rejected us, God's messengers. Jesus reassures them that they are so powerful and nothing can harm them, even when they walk out into the world with nothing but the clothes on their backs. The physical trappings they rely on do not protect them. No money, no bag, no food, no shoes. Themselves and God's power. The power that fills them with the ability to heal and to teach, to cure and to preach, to withstand evil and remain free from pain. When I hear this antithetical packing list, I cannot help but feel some panic rise within my chest. What do you mean, Jesus, by telling us not to take anything at all out into the world? How could we ever walk up to a stranger's door, wearing no shoes, and expect them to let us into their homes, to feed us, to house us? How could we ever choose to be that vulnerable and in need of help? And why would you want us to begin a relationship like that in the first place? Aren't you full of power, God? Don't you want us to arrive into town with a little more pomp and circumstance instead of showing up begging for help? Jesus isn't listening to any of my questions. He asks us to do something infinitely more difficult. He asks us to trust him and to trust the strangers that we've never met to provide for us. He asks us to trust the power that lives deep within us, the power to extend peace, the power to ask for what we need, the power to heal others. If the disciples took everything they needed with them, they have the danger of possibly entering town with some arrogance. They have the danger of walking up to the doors of strangers and saying, I know the answer for exactly what you need for a better life. Listen to me, someone you have never met before, tell you everything you need to know about the way your life can be as wonderful as my life. I highly doubt that that would go as well, but that is the way the majority of Christians have tried to go about sharing the good news of Jesus Christ with other people. Through a sense of entitlement and arrogance, rather than a sense of humility and peace and reciprocity. Christians often enter foreign places and assume that we know the answers, as if no one else has thought of how to live and be and love before we have thought about these deeply human things and shown up at their doorstep. The United States approaches the good news of democracy in a similar way. In countless wars in foreign countries like Korea and Vietnam, the Persian Gulf, Afghanistan, and Iraq, to name a few, we arrive on the scene declaring our way of governing and way of life is best suited for an entirely different people, culture, or place. We insert ourselves into conflicts we have no right to participate in. Our arrogance sends our military forces out in droves, purporting we bring justice and peace with us, liberty and freedom for all. And yet at the end of those wars, we have brought more death and more bombed out cities, more displaced families, more traumatized children, more refugee camps, more polluted land and water, and more puppet governments. This is not the way that Jesus sends out his disciples. And why do we think this is the way we must go when we engage with others? The marriage between church and state gave birth to the Christian nationalism that we know well in the United States, most aptly known in the Civil War era hymn, the Battle Hymn of the Republic. This hymn is the love song that this marriage between church and state relies on to maintain its spark. I have seen the damage that this love song does to veterans when they return from war. I was a chaplain resident for 6 months at a VA hospital before I was ordained. I worked with patients in the senior care wing, the rehabilitation unit, and spinal cord injury patients. Many of them suffered greatly with reconciling their belief that God had condoned and sent them to war, that the United States was the good news for the world, and all the wars and people they killed were for good reasons. They needed to believe so desperately that the wars they fought were holy wars. The most hollow words they told me they would hear when they got back were, "Thank you for your service." The everyday citizen does not understand, they would tell me, what it is like to kill someone on a battlefield, or realize they had bombed out a civilian's home instead of a supposed enemy hideout. Thank you for your service to them was like hearing someone say, "Thank you for committing murder so I didn't have to." I heard stories of what it was like to return home to the disdain of fellow Americans, the immense guilt that comes with taking human lives, the exhausting mental gymnastics to rationalize all of the violence and pain. Imagine for a moment what this type of belief system does to someone's relationship with God, with themselves, with others. It is justifying all sorts of wrongs, all sorts of horrors that we cannot and should not bear as human beings, that our souls were not built to carry. Questions like, why would God want me to do that? Am I a bad person because I did? How do I ask God for forgiveness for something that I was doing for God and country when God and my country asked me to do it in the first place? We will sing the Battle Hymn of the Republic shortly, and I want us all to sing those words out loud. I want us to hear the words coming out of our mouths. I want us to imagine the millions of soldiers since the Civil War who have sung this hymn to prepare themselves for battle, to keep up their hope, to continue to persevere in times of distress. The hymn boldly declares his truth is marching on. When I think about the disciples walking into towns, they were not marching. They were walking into town where they did not know a single person, with nothing but the clothes they were wearing. I do not hear them singing this song. They boldly declare the words of Jesus Christ, "Peace to this house. The kingdom of God has come near." What would it be like if this was the song we sang instead? A song of peace and welcome, receptivity and vulnerability, hospitality and healing. No longer would we sing the Battle Hymn of the Republic. We would sing something like the Healing Hymn of the Kingdom.